report from March 11th, and go ahead and advance the slide, what we anticipate or what we experienced and how we responded. So as many of you know, we've got so many school districts across Southern Arizona in very different operating models, and then looking into October, continued uncertainty around what that may look like for schools, and then certainly what that may finish out for the year, and then even looking into the remainder of the 2020-2021 school year, a lot of uncertainty for how that platform will look for learning. I actually have two kids down the hallway here doing virtual, one doing a virtual school environment at Tucson Unified School District, and the other one in classroom. So I am a living little petri dish of what the hybrid models are starting to look like. So obviously for a low-income family, they are the hardest hit by COVID, most at risk if they don't have reliable and affordable internet service. And we talked a little bit about Connect to Compete at the beginning, so let's drill into a little bit more about what we're doing here with Connect to Compete. We've been able to rapidly scale up our device and internet options for their families, like I said earlier. We opened up that program to allow for free internet for all eligible families for Connect to Compete. We did that offer back in March and extended it several times throughout the summer. It was set to expire here, I guess it would be tomorrow, September 30th, in the next day or two. And really excited to share with you all that tomorrow we'll be formally announcing the extension of that Connect to Compete program through the end of the year, which will allow us to continue to enroll families across Southern Arizona that are eligible for Connect to Compete. And again, the most vulnerable, low-income families that don't have the ability to access the internet are really at a disadvantage in this environment. And we don't want that digital inequity to put anybody at a disadvantage in this current environment, or in any environment for that matter. So what can we do? Go ahead and advance the slide, please. What can we do in conjunction with all of you? And this slide, I am, like I said, happy to share with you, has been updated or will be updated tomorrow. So one of the things that we have been talking to communities, and I'll share with you two models we've been talking to communities about, is how do we make sure that we're providing the information that you all need to be able to share this critical information around Connect to Compete with your communities and with your residents. So our team can work with you to make sure you have flyers. We're working with the school districts to make sure that they have, where there's opportunity for enrollment events, drive-through enrollment events. We've gotten really creative in ways to make sure that this information is given to families in the most comprehensive and easy way to make it possible for them to enroll and work with them, given the current circumstances and environment. Again, a couple of things to think about there is one of the things that we've been able to do with communities is also leverage CARES Act funding to help get people subsidized as well for broadband, and being able to do a couple of really creative things with some school districts across Arizona, and making sure that you all have that kind of information and that you can share it readily too. Let's go ahead and talk a little bit specifically about those programs. If you could advance the slide for me, Ashton. So one program in particular here in Southern Arizona is the AMFI Foundation, and we just announced this partnership a few weeks ago. But as many of you know, I have a number of, well, let me back up before I move into this and talk a little bit about the Connect to Compete program as far as the growth in Southern Arizona. So between basically now and March, we've had about a 433%, I'll say it again, 433% growth rate in our Connect to Compete program. And what that says to me is that it's not necessarily an accessibility, access to internet, it's an adoption challenge that we've had in Southern Arizona. So our footprint, we'll share a little bit about our footprint specifically in Sahuarita, but our footprint reaches extensively across the Tucson area and obviously throughout Sahuarita. And we still see some gaps where we know that there are families, there are students, there are populations of people that may not be adopting internet or accessing broadband programs. They may still be trying to use mobile applications, for example, or cell phones to be able to do at-home or hybrid learning models, and that's something that we are trying to work with our communities to make sure where those gaps exist, we can help backfill and provide access to programs like Connect to Compete. So that's kind of where this program, this foundation model with AMFI was birthed, was couple of different things. They had about 5,000 families that they had identified that were eligible for free or reduced lunch and had either various forms or no internet. They were either using their cell phones or didn't have broadband at home. So we came in and worked with them to be able to provide a fast way to access and sign up for Connect to Compete. We partnered with Comcast to be able to provide this service too, because we provide service to a portion of AmFi and Comcast provides service to another portion of AmFi. So this is, technology agnostic. We can bring in multiple providers to be able to provide the solution. In fact, one thing we've been saying to community from the very beginning is this is going to take probably a number of providers and investments to be able to leverage, the investments that are necessary to make sure that our families have access to broadband. So the foundation is sponsoring 6 months of free in-home high-speed broadband and internet for their families. And then we'll come back and reevaluate with them at the end of the 6 months. But their goal was to make sure that they could take off the table that worry for families and their community, so they didn't have to think about it basically through the end of the year. We just last week did a hardware distribution event on site at AmFi. It was really great evening. We were able to actually bring out Wilbur and Wilma, so families came through. And if you can imagine, they pulled up in their car and popped their trunk, and they were able to get the devices they needed, i.e. Laptops. We also did some special needs computers for our families in the AmFi school district that have special needs, specifically disabled students that may have a specific need for hardware. We were able to match hardware for them as well. And again, like I said, this is really all about bringing together a multiple layer of providers and different funders to be able to really bridge that digital divide and make sure that there is digital equity through our community. So that's a local example, and there's probably about 5 or 6 other school district foundation models in the state of Arizona right now that are up and running that look very similar to this. There are a variety of different conversations taking place at the community college level as well to do something similar to this with community college students. But I want to share with you one more model, if you will indulge me, and then we'll talk a little bit about what we can do with you guys. If you would advance the slide one more for me, Ashton. I want to tell you a little bit about a program we have in our neighboring state of Nevada. Las Vegas is one of our sister markets in the Southwest region. It's Tucson, Southern Arizona, Las Vegas, and Phoenix in our Southwest region for Cox. And something our Las Vegas office did that we're really pleased and seeing some great results here is they partnered directly with the Clark County School District and Clark County to be able to access and leverage CARES Act dollars to immediately subsidize 20,000 students in the Clark County School District. Clark County is, I think, the largest school district in Nevada. As you can imagine, of course, Las Vegas was hit extraordinarily hard by COVID and the tourism industry. I think I heard a staggering statistic the other day of something like 6,000 employees from one hospitality employer in Las Vegas were let go all on the same afternoon. So really a critical time there in that community. The legislature was able to appropriate the dollars directly to the Clark County School District, and they are providing Connect to Compete service for all of the 20,000 Clark County School District students through the remainder of the 2020-2021 school year. So really taking it beyond just 2020 and saying, there's so much uncertainty as to what 2021 will look like as well. Let's go ahead again, like I said, and just remove this as a barrier, remove this as a concern for our families and make sure that they have access to at-home broadband. So one piece that we've been sharing and talking to a number of folks here in the community here in Southern Arizona that has, I think, taken seed and is of interest is really, I think it was designed to be really the funding mechanism, but a nonprofit coalition was built around this program called Connecting Kids, and it has become the one-stop shop for families now. So if you can imagine families, what the variety of different needs you have with children at home, working from home, maybe not working from home, but schooling from home, or various levels of hybrid. Maybe there's food scarcity issues, there may be equipment issues, there may be other utility issues, but this nonprofit coalition Connecting Kids is really just a wrap-around service model that's operating now in the Las Vegas area. And we were able to very quickly help 10,000 families within the period. I think it was about just a handful of days from its implementation. 10,000 families had been signed up and supported through the Connecting Kids model and Connect to Compete. One piece here that I'm super excited about, and talking to a handful of our school districts here in southern Arizona, is something that they are piloting in Las Vegas, and that is a Teachers Tech grant. So again, many of us are familiar with the needs of students and families, and absolutely a huge focus has been placed on that, making sure that our families are connected at home, but obviously teachers have needs too in this new model. So imagine if you're a science teacher, for example, or an English teacher or a math teacher, you may need, a second screen. You may need a new webcam. You may need, a better sound system for being able to teach remotely, either in your classroom, from your classroom, or from your home. So something that Cox has been able to partner with a couple of other funders in the Las Vegas area around is a technology grant, mini grants for teachers' needs. So teachers will receive funding to be able to access whatever technology they may need to help them through the 2020-21 school year. So again, just sharing some of this as far as things that we're doing across our footprint and our enterprise, and conversations that we're having in southern Arizona with our education partners and with other private funders, and with our government and elected officials too, about ways that we can continue to support our southern Arizona community, make sure that there are no gaps, and understand what the needs are in each one of our communities. Next slide, please. Just a quick, we'll back up real quick. Probably one of the most interesting slides for all of you, and something we've talked to you about in the past, is just a quick glance at what our Cox service area looks like in southern Arizona, specifically the Sahuarita and Green Valley area. So what you see in green is shaded is our network. That's our fiber and coax cable network running through the community and the southern Arizona area. So just to give you a kind of a snapshot and a sense of where we're currently operating. One thing that we're having very direct and specific conversations, they're sometimes challenging conversations, I won't lie, is where we may not currently have services, but where our education partners, specifically our school districts, have families and students. So is there a way that, again, we can either work directly with the school districts or the communities to help find creative solutions to reach these families or these neighborhoods or these communities, or are there other partners that we can bring to bear to be able to provide access to broadband and broadband services in communities? So just wanted to give you a quick overhead aerial view of our network in Sahuarita. Happy to answer any questions separately on that as well. And before we wrap up, I would be remiss if we don't move to the next slide. I will go ahead and just talk a little specifically about what we might be able to do together. So one of our asks tonight here, and the reason why we're here, is to, again, ask your help to go ahead and share information about Connect to Compete in your community. Help us to identify those families that might qualify for low-income broadband services, or who may be on the bubble or the cusp. One thing that I've been talking quite a lot to school districts about is families that may not traditionally qualify for Connect to Compete today, but may be in a precarious financial situation, or their circumstances may change quickly. That's something I think the school districts and school foundations are really starting to take a closer look at, being able to subsidize those families as well, or provide some level of support. And we have programs built into our Connect to Compete program where we can do that on the back end, very quickly qualify families and support the school district's needs through a variety of different products, whether that's Connect to Compete or 25-free speed internet, or any other product that we offer as well. School districts can either credit for a certain amount of money, or they can sign up for the free Connect to Compete program that's now extended through the end of the year, or they can identify specific products that they want to subsidize, either for their students or in some cases for their teachers as well. Mentioned a little bit about the partnerships that we're working in the community to connect private sector investment with the public sector needs. Certainly extend that offer to Sahuarita. And want you all to know that we're here, and just to remember us as a partner in the community. We, obviously have been working really hard to respond to the broadband needs, but we wanted to take just a minute tonight to give you guys this update, and just, a reminder that we are here as your community partner. So with that, I will pause and hand it back over to you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, and certainly get us any type of information. We have different communication methods, not only through the town, but a bunch of us on the council are pretty active in various Facebook blogs on where we live, so we can certainly, push that information out individually. And the Compete to Connect, is that tied to free and reduced lunch or federal poverty level? Is there kind of an easy cutoff that, you can communicate with them?
Yeah, the easiest way to think about the Connect to Compete eligibility criteria is free and reduced lunch. There are other ways to qualify as well, but that's pretty much I think probably the simplest way. And the information we'll provide to you, we'll send over to you tomorrow. We'll get into more detail about the different ways that you can qualify. Like I said, I think some school districts are looking beyond that too, and recognizing the need might be above that level too.
Right, and I would agree with you, because our town is 30 square miles, our school district is 600, and, we serve students from Arivaca, Amato, and I know that I think you have partnerships with third-party vendors, but that's not actually your service area, so that would be something to look at. That digital divide has become even more apparent, obviously, in this environment, especially in our outlying areas. And within our town, it's not really our town boundaries, but it's in our zip code, east and west of us, as well as south of us. That I worry about that, is that digital divide, continues to grow greater. And I know there was a portion of our town that GigaBlast has served, and from an economic development standpoint, we just toured on the market our Sahuarita Advanced Technology Center, and there's always a great concern. We always talk about infrastructure as water, sewer, and roads, and obviously COVID has showed this is our sort of our fourth leg of the stool. Can you touch on how we're doing on broadband expansion, GigaBlast, and getting more coverage in our community?
Yeah, absolutely, I'd be happy to, and we can take that offline too and talk specifically about if there are areas. And one of the things that we're trying to do, and Sahuarita is a great example of it, is keep pace with planned and projected growth. And I know a lot of development had stalled a while back, and was probably in various states of readiness again, and maybe slowing down, but also is moving forward in some cases. So we want to make sure we're working with the developers in your area. I think in most cases we've had a really great relationship and continue to enjoy a great relationship with those developers to know where they're planning on moving next, and make sure that we're pacing with them and putting where we need to, putting our network into the ground. I think, like you mentioned, we have the GigaBlast product, gig services available across Sahuarita. If there are areas that we have, any gaps there, we'd be happy to come down and sit and look at that with you guys too, and explore what we might be able to do differently. I would say, I mentioned earlier in the presentation that we're continuing to invest in the network. We're planning about $10 billion that will be invested across our enterprise, 26 markets across our enterprise over the next 5 years, but certainly a significant piece of that investment will happen in Arizona. Arizona is Cox's largest market. We joke that when Arizona sneezes, of course, Cox gets a cold, so it's something that we're able to leverage, quite frankly, for the benefits of Arizona and communities like Sahuarita. So happy to continue to have those conversations with you. Really enjoyed in the past being able to think a little bit further ahead and further along with your economic development team too. They've done a great job in staying connected with Cox.
Thanks. Yeah, I think we have about 1,000 lots in some platting process. Quail Creek just bought some state land north of them. So, and we have our CCAP project, hopefully moving to the east. So there's going to be a lot of, I think, continual growth as we go on.
Mr. Mayor, have you guys looked at wireless technology to aid some of these rural areas without putting infrastructure into the ground?
Yeah, so that's a really interesting question. I didn't talk about this in the presentation, but Cox actually has a relationship with wireless providers, Sprint, T-Mobile, Verizon, others, in the sense that we provide small cell technology, which is really just kind of the infrastructure, the enabler for wireless technology. And that was pre-COVID, it was just essentially we provide the fiber, and we can build out the services to help provide the wireless services. Fast forward to COVID, and we have had some conversations, and you'll see this happening across the country, and that was what I was alluding to when I said, I think it will take a variety of providers, specifically when you talk about some of the areas you mentioned in the Sahuarita footprint, where you may have, a multi-phase or a multi-pronged approach for getting broadband or getting connectivity into areas that may include, traditional fixed carrier like Cox. It may include a wireless carrier like a T-Mobile going, who just did a very large announcement around their investments on connectivity specifically for education. So it's something we're exploring it was actually a handful of school districts here in Arizona. I can't say it's progressed, far enough along down the line to announce any partnerships specifically, but I think COVID the silver lining is it has enabled a lot of and accelerated a lot of very interesting conversations around different unique ways that we can provide service across our footprints and beyond our footprints, really. I think that's the critical piece.
Thanks. Anybody else? Any questions? Comments? No? Thanks for appearing tonight and giving us that good information, and we'll look forward to additional information coming our way, and we'll be happy to spread it.
Absolutely. Thank you all so much. Good luck to you all.
Thanks. Next, we have item number 10, Madam Clerk.
Update on solar array installation at Sahuarita Wastewater Reclamation Plant.
Thank you. Tonight, we have Beth Abramovitz, our Public Works Director, Town Engineer, who will be presenting this item. Welcome.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. It's great to actually see all of you. So it's been a while. So we actually started discussions about solar back in about 2018, and we looked at a couple different locations as possibilities. We looked at Town Hall, we looked at the police department, and we looked at the wastewater treatment plant. Unfortunately, due to the number of solar arrays and the amount of hardscape and landscaping at Town Hall, we didn't feel that that was a good kind of pilot project location for the treatment plant. But the wastewater treatment plant, on the other hand, was an ideal location. We have a very high 24/7 electric demand, we had the available space, and we had very minimal existing hardscape, landscape, or other kind of paving. So initially we looked at putting the solar arrays in the floodplain area where other structures couldn't be built. But during the design there were some concerns with how deep those foundations would have to be for scour in case of a flooding event. So we decided to relocate those outside of the floodplain. So what you see up here is the final solar array locations. They were moved interior to the plant they now serve as shade structures for parking, equipment, and other materials. And they were also chosen to ensure that they do not interfere with any of the future plant expansions. So some of the project specifics, there are 8 very large solar canopies out there, and we generate over 1.6 million kilowatt hours per year. So that's about 85% of our overall electricity demand at the treatment plant. So how does it work? So Solon, and actually I was remiss, we actually have a representative from Solon here with us tonight, Luke, in case we have any really specific questions. So Solon uses federal energy credits to pay for the service, and they provide a kind of turnkey service on the facilities. So our treatment plant is powered by solar during the day, and then at night we get powered by TEP. So the town pays Solon a flat rate for the solar power, and we continue to pay TEP for any energy uses that aren't solar. Solon owns and maintains the system until when and if the town decides we want to purchase it. If at the end of 20 years we decide that the technology is out of date, it's not producing to the extent that we want it to, they'll come in and remove the system at no cost to us. We can purchase the system at any time, but the best time for us, if we're going to consider that, is after 7 years, so that we don't have to repay those energy credits. And then over the 20 years, depending on the increase annually in the TEP power, we anticipate that we're going to save anywhere between $750,000 to potentially more than $3 million. So again, it depends on how much the actual cost of TEP increases every year. Okay, but in addition to energy savings, do we have any other reasons why we might want to do this? So the most tangible benefit, of course, is the cost of electricity needed to run the treatment plant. But the installation of the panels as shade structures is also a benefit. It extends the life of our vehicles and our equipment, as well as our materials, so they're not sitting out in the sun all the time. There's also sustainability benefits, which are listed up here. The EPA has a greenhouse gases equivalency calculator on their website. So it estimates the emissions reductions and everything else from using renewable energy. So as an example, the 148 million plus or minus smartphones, that's like everybody in town charging their smartphone completely 5,000 times. So just an idea of what we're saving energy-wise. So the construction of the actual system took about 10 weeks, and it was completed in November. We still haven't turned it on per se because TEP still has to do their part. They have to install what's called a transfer trip system, and what that does is it's essentially a circuit breaker for them that if like they're working on the lines, so our system isn't putting energy back into the system, so they can shut it down so it doesn't have an overload or cause a problem if they need to work on a line or something along those lines. We've also included just a couple of construction photos of the installation. And really, that's it. Luke, if you have anything you wanted, not to put you on the spot, because we didn't have anything planned for you, but if you had something you wanted to add to that I might have not included.
That was great. You did a great job, Matt. Yep. I would add the pictures are fun. They're impressive, and a lot of those are 13-foot 6-inch clearance height. So ADOT highway clearance height. So RVs, semi trucks, and the larger equipment can be utilized out there also.
You said that it was completed when?
Mid-September, so
Mid-September.
about a week ago now.
Yes.
Okay. And how long do we think we're gonna be waiting for TEP?
We're hoping December that we'll have everything online.
That was one of my questions, if there's anything we can do or I can do. I don't know if that's a longer than expected time to get something like that installed,
Seems
but
like
it's pretty
3 months
nice.
to me.
TEP takes a while. Part of this issue was we had to negotiate costs with them, and they do everything as an estimate. And then at the end of it, you have to pay up front, and then at the end they send you a check back for any money. And actually we negotiated with them for quite some time, but we negotiated down, about $400,000, if I remember correctly, give or take, so that we didn't have to, hope that they sent us the reimbursement check for engineering and construction that maybe they didn't do. So we felt that $400,000 was worth a couple extra months.
Okay. Thanks. I was wondering, that was one of my questions on, just seemed like there was a lag on that one circuit breaker of sorts.
Yes, because it doesn't seem like it's in their best interest to actually get this turned on.
Right. And then I also noticed it was on our consent agenda that usually things keep going up, but I saw the cost of the project.
And that was a result of the part of the negotiations with TEP.
Oh, I get you. Okay. Yep. Any other questions? No. Oh, Luke has a question.
If I can just add in there, do you want me to go up to the...
Sure. Yeah, that way it would be on the record a little bit easier. That'll make our town attorney much happier. He can hear it.
I just wanted to add in there, big thank you to the town for working with us and going above and beyond and working with DEP to reduce those interconnection costs. Like Beth said, those original costs were estimated, and we do quite a few of these projects, we have a pretty good idea of where the cost comes in. But like that number that Beth had mentioned, that just came as a total surprise. And they estimated, hey, this is gonna cost almost $800,000 to connect to the system. Just they were calling it new metering equipment. So the town worked to get those costs back down to close to the expected cost and even a little bit below. So that's why we came back and said, hey, thank you so much, we were able to reduce the cost here. So that's just a little more background on why there's a reduction and the good job that the town did in working on that. So
Thanks for adding that. Appreciate it. Anything else? Thanks, Beth.
Thank you.
Next it comes at item number 11, Madam Clerk.
Discussion and possible adoption of ordinance number 2020-151, adopting a town code amendment to chapter 2.10.060, powers and duties of the mayor of the town code of the town of Sahuarita, and repealing all resolutions, ordinances, and rules of the town of Sahuarita in conflict therewith.
Thank you. Mr. Hockley, our town attorney, will introduce the item. I'll say a couple words on it, and then we'll open up for discussion. Mr. Hockley?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, I just went back and listened to the audio from the meeting when you discussed this before. And then I had a conversation with the mayor and the manager and Councilmember Bracco, and felt that the direction that I thought you wanted to go was to continue to have the mayor have emergency powers, but those would expire after a certain period of time. The idea being then the council would be in a position to start meeting again and govern the town. The concept of the emergency is the council can't meet, somebody's got to govern. I didn't know how many days, I didn't want to be presumptuous and pick a number of days, so I didn't. So the proposed amendment adds the language that the declaration of emergency will automatically expire blank days after the declaration date. And if you look at the proposed motion, you'll need to fill the blank in there with whatever period of time you decide. And I'm available for questions, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks. And, this is certainly unusual times. When the governor declared an emergency, I did, and we've been sort of acting under this. And when Councilman Bracco brought it to me, it's interesting, we're under an emergency, but we're having town council meetings, right now. So, and, the difficulty is at some point we will go to probably a direct election of mayor, and then whoever that person is, whatever powers are in code, gives that person sort of free will. So we thought it was a good idea to have that discussion when everybody is working together. I, always at least somewhat know how all of you think. I've tried to always act in that best interest, but I don't think anybody ever, when the town was formed, thought we'd be in this situation 6 months. It'd be almost 7 months moving forward. So we thought this was a good time to, have this discussion instead of in the midst of another crisis down the road. We're in a different situation. So, Councilman Bracco, do you want to add some?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And again, this, as I stated the last time when we brought this up to put on the agenda, this has absolutely nothing to do with you but we need to fix these things now. We have had, at the state level, a monarch for going on 7 months. The Constitution was never to be suspended for this period of time. It is no longer an emergency, it's now a way of life. And what I want to do is fix our issue locally, and then put pressure on Pima County and the state legislature to fix their issues. We should never have this much power vested in a single individual for this period of time. So with that being said, I'd like to, if there's any other discussion.
I wanted everybody, because, right now it's going to be about the amount of days.
Right.
That we want to have it, so I'd want to hear from everybody. It's interesting because, there's sort of I think there's a sweet spot on it, and it's really, I think originally these powers were, if we had a train derailment,
right.
That's how I was thinking of it, and I couldn't get all of you together at 3 o'clock in the afternoon to figure out. After speaking with the town manager, he has been under evacuation scenarios in the past, so it's kind of, where I, or any mayor, can move forward without gathering everybody together, at least, a quorum, enough of a quorum to sort of move forward. Again, and part of what maybe Mr. Hockley can add on to is just to clarify, because what I didn't want is any of the funding sources, because this wouldn't prevent us from reauthorizing the emergency.
Correct.
And then kind of going, because that was my only sensitivity is, if you're under a state of emergency, you get certain funds and things,
reauthorize,
reauthorize it.
say extend it another 2 weeks, another month, whatever the emergency is, but at least it's not one individual with all of that power without any oversight.
Absolutely. And, so we'll open that up, but what were you thinking, Bill, was a timeframe that you were comfortable with?
I would like to open up to 10 days. I can't think of too many events that would happen that we could not get either a phone call or a Zoom or something other than a catastrophic infrastructure failure. And even if that occurs, then none of this means anything because you can't get the word out anyway.
Right, right.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
And I was actually gonna go with 7, because again, if anything, this event has shown us that there's many, many ways around it, just with our Zoom meetings and everything else, which is certainly, acceptable in this case. So I was gonna go 7, but, because I don't know why you wouldn't be able to get a quorum within 7 days,
Great.
for the most part.
Other thoughts?
No, I'm total agreement on this. I think, the important thing, and maybe this COVID thing has shown it when this started, is the lack of communication with our residents creates anxiety and tension in the community. And so I think as a council, being elected by the community, our job is to get the word out on what's going on. And again, nothing against the mayor on this incident, but we have an obligation to do that. And so keeping that number of days with the declared emergencies, and then, as a council, we can make whatever decisions.
Right, because you could actually come back, Mr. Hockley, correct me if I'm wrong, you could come back and say, wow, we're so in deep on this, you could reauthorize it for 14 days,
Yeah.
or 20 days,
But
or
as
whatever.
long
you
as
want
we
to do.
have another body reviewing it, that's what we're missing right now.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, we can't get the emergency called off at the state level, even though he says it has been. He just hasn't told anybody.
Right.
Yeah, so, no, that's my point. So I think we've got to do a better job in our community of making sure that citizens know what's going on.
Councilman Morales, you okay with the conversation, the way it's going?
Yep. For my few comments, I guess, I felt that, once we started meeting as a council again, that was my question, is at what point do we do this? Like, how is it benefiting us to still be an emergency? So when Brocco first brought this up, I was in favor of it too, just to make sure that we are limiting the powers and that the governing bodies as quickly as possible can get back into place.
Yeah, we need just to get into a normal process within a reasonable period of time when some declared emergency seems to run its course.
Right.
And again, this has turned into a way of life. This is no longer an emergency.
Right. I mean, and we're in this situation now, you don't have to weigh in, Mr. Hockley, but, I mean, obviously, so one, I've got emergency powers, two, we're voting on stuff.
Right.
I mean, literally, I could come out and say, hey, overrule over everybody,
That's right. That's absolutely right, and that was my biggest fear when I saw all this happen.
Right. Councilmember West, you want to weigh in at all?
No, I have no problem. I think, if we're really dealing with an emergency, 5 days, 7 days, is adequate to at least mobilize the initial response to the situation, which is the mayor's responsibility, the mobilization period. Once the mobilization period is over, and that's usually, depending on the emergency, that 5-7 days should cover that. And then we go back into the normal process and take it from there.
Right.
And I couldn't agree more. I mean, we now have this national emergency going on, and the media just beating it to death.
Right. And, I don't know, Mr. Hockley or Terry, I don't know if you want to weigh in, just from a 5, a 7, a 10, to try to get everybody together. I don't know if you have any comments or any suggestions.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, I don't want to speak for someone else, Kelly's not here, but Mr. Udall and I did talk about this. He has been through some fire evacuations, and he was concerned that if it's not long enough, I presume the mandatory evacuation ends with the end of the mayor's powers.
Not necessarily. All we have to do is get a phone call together with a quorum of 4, and we extend it for another week, 2 weeks, whatever the event may be, but it has some validation to it.
It's up to the council.
Right.
I just wanted to pass that along. That was his concern if it's too short.
Right, and I know he had that conversation.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I just go back to the point that I was making, the mobilization. The mayor should be under pressure to immediately come up with a plan of action, a mobilization plan, many of which already exist on the books, and they are simply require implementation. But that should be a fairly short period of time. And as has been indicated, there are other ways that can be extended if necessary. I don't believe you should give anybody in emergency services a lot of time to think. I think a lot of it has to do with response, control, and management. The fires that I've managed in the forests and the other places and the emergencies, you have a limited period of time, and then you bring in others.
Right. Then you're kind of more into the normal operating procedures as you, like what Bill said, we're still under this, you know.
Correct.
It's a way of life at this point.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
It's kind of a standard that if there is an emergency, it takes about 3 days to get help into your community. So I'm worried about a 5-day turnaround, because we'll still be at the beginning stages of trying to figure this out if we did it for 5. I'd like to see after that 3-day, at least a week for the figuring. So I support closer to Rocco with 7 to 10 days. And I'm not gonna, if anybody has one favor over the other.
Yeah,
But I'm leaning more towards 10, quite frankly, just enough, but I'm good with whatever.
Any other discussion? Would you like to make a motion, Councilman Guerrero?
I move to adopt ordinance number 2020-151, moving the mayor's emergency powers to 7 days.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor, signify by aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Yes. Having no more further business, and a reminder, October 26th is our next meeting. We're adjourned. Thanks for coming this evening. The mayor, thanks for being here. I have to share my Denison pen here. I'll read a pen occasionally.
Consider yourself